area. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. And providing more information is never a negative. The question as to what action can happen from that is one in which council needs to have that conversation. So
Okay.
in terms of being able to provide more information, of course,
Okay.
I don't see any scenario in which getting information is problematic. And I will go on a limb and say that. And if anyone thinks I'm totally off base, please feel free to shut me down on that.
One reason I had suggested it, Mr. President, was that in 2010, if you recall from information that Tree Pittsburgh did for us, we were at 51%. Our canopy slipped to 48% by 2015, and it has decreased further without the development going on in the C1 district. So what I'm concerned about is if we don't pay attention to it, we're going to get down to where we're at that 40% number.
Quick question for me, or for you, Ken, if you don't mind. You had mentioned something about the church and the number of trees they had planted. What was the cost for that? Do you know? Do you have any idea what it cost to plant 100 trees?
Well, they have a grant. They got a grant.
I'm just wondering if you have any idea what.
No, I don't, but I can find out. In fact, they've asked to meet with us so that they're coordinating their work with what we're trying to do for the whole borough and the school district. Yeah. Now, I'll ask that question. Yeah. I'll find out how much your grant is.
Yeah, that'd be great to know. So
Mr. President, I had talked to the person from Tree Pittsburgh. She had mentioned to me that it was about $30 a tree, and that included the staking and the fencing they put around it.
Okay, it's about $30 a tree. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, I appreciate your report, Ken. Always a pleasure. I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
And move forward. If there's anybody else that has any other public comment, I generally try and both look and see. It's a little easier today, not as many video cameras, so I can see if anybody has it. If you want to raise your hand, or if you're on phone and you need, I'll give an extra second just to make sure if there's anybody on the phone who wanted to comment that you can unmute yourself if you wanted to do so. And if not, then I will go back to our regular agenda. All righty. Well, I appreciate, as always, both the comments from the public and the attendance from the public. So, without y'all, we don't know what we're doing. So this is going to move us on to some of the items we need to discuss. Just making sure everybody has the meeting minutes. If anybody had any, in terms of council space, any questions about them on staff reports, anything along that line today? That was simpler than I would have thought, but I'll take that for the day. Moving on, we do have the resignation of Don DeFranco, who's leaves us with a vacancy. Obviously, we appreciate Don's service to the community, and so I think at this time, because he had tendered his resignation, we hadn't officially accepted it, and so I think we can take that action tonight, and then following that, if we want to discuss what we want to do with regard to the vacancy, I would be open to that. So I don't know if anybody wanted to offer a motion pertaining to that or not.
Mr. President, I reluctantly propose that we accept Don DeFranco's resignation from council.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Norma. Is there any discussion? I will simply say that as always, I appreciate everybody's service to our community, and Don certainly brought a perspective that was important, and he will be missed. I don't know if anybody else had any other conversation on it. Otherwise, I will turn it to a vote. All righty. Then this is on the motion accepting the resignation. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? and his resignation is unfortunately accepted. Which opens up the conversation with regard to the vacancy itself. You know, as you know, we did undergo a process already looking at vacancy recently. And so we did have a number of applicants already on the table. So I'm going to kind of turn it to council folks. If anybody wanted to have a conversation about that, we can do that now, or if you're interested in tabling it, we can do that. It is at your discretion as council. So I'll open it now in terms of for conversation on replacing the vacancy, understanding that we have had a number of applicants that we've already interviewed for the position that had come up earlier.
Okay, Mr. President, I think it's necessary that we have that conversation tonight. We interviewed a number of people. From my personal point of view, Matt Castiglia kind of stood out. And I think he would be a good replacement for Don on the council. So I don't know if I have to move to propose him to fill the vacancy or what the process is.
It would be, you can entertain a motion now if you want. We can have kind of open discussion first before motion, or we can have discussion about that motion. So if you want to move to that, if there, I'm fine with that. And we can have that discussion inside the motion. That would require you to offer a motion and someone to second it.
Okay.
If that happens, then we can have that discussion inside the motion.
Okay.
And Mr. Collins, before you do, I just remind you that the to fill a vacancy, council does do this by resolution. So your motion would be to adopt resolution number 4505, appointing whoever you want to appoint to fill the vacancy.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Solicitor. That's the sound of a winner right there.
Mr. President, I resolve that we move to approve resolution 4505 and appoint Matt Castiglia to the Borough Council.
I'll
And
second that.
Thank you, Vice President Law. At this point, it's open for discussion. Council, any particular discussion we want to have at this time? I will simply say that we have been through this entire process already recently, so that's why this is, I think, unlike the last process. We literally have interviewed a group of people. We went through this entire process, and so we know the applicants that are on the table right now. It was a good pool. In fact, it was a great pool. It's the best pool that I've seen, including my own pool. So, I am comfortable with the decision to move forward with the next best applicant. So I'll just leave it there. Did anybody else have any other discussion, or we can move it to a vote?
I just wanted, have we talked to Matt? Anyone? Is he aware that this vacancy is, and he's okay with this?
Yes.
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 Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
That's actually a very important question, Adam.
We did.
Yeah, I believe Kevin and I both spoke to him.
Okay, good.
Do this, yeah.
Yeah, before I vote on this, I wanted to be sure that someone had told him.
Yeah.
So,
It would be kind of
Mr. Councilman, that is a very good point. Yeah, so in this environment, we actually could have missed doing that. So thank you.
and it would be kind of awesome if we just started randomly putting people on council that didn't know and like just called them up and like, hey, guess what? But
Good way to do it.
And I may add that Matt is part of the meeting tonight. He's
yes, that's it.
zoomed in. So
Yeah. Okay.
And any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, congratulations, Matt. You are now on council. As I say, there's a sucker born every minute, and you are the latest of the group.
Mr. President, if I could.
You
Mr.
can.
President? Yeah,
Yes.
so basically I'll work with Matt to get him sworn in, and then he'll be seated at the next regular meeting next week. Just to let everybody know that's the process. Mr. Solicitor, I don't think I missed anything, right?
Mr. Graziani, I believe just the affidavit of residency is probably in your sort of welcome packet there as part of that, but I assume that you were including that. So yeah, I think that's everything. We'll get hopefully the Judge Caulfield will be able to be available to do that.
Okay,
All right.
welcome, Matt.
Welcome to the party, sir.
Welcome, Matt.
It is work to be done, so we're glad to have you on board.
Yes,
Glad
we'll
to
be
have you on
plaguing you as much as we possibly can.
All right. So this moves us on to the discussion regarding the tax collector.
Right.
And so, you know, the issue on the table was we had the resignation of the tax collector, and there was a question of filling that space. It was brought up by the borough manager initially, and I'll reserve comment in a second, about looking at outsourcing that versus having an individual come back in again. You know, and so I think that is where we're at right now. That's the conversation on the table today. I don't know that there's necessarily, and you can tell me, Mr. Solicitor, because winning is all you know now, if you can, you know, whether there's an action to be had tonight. But I think generally it's just a conversation to make sure we're on the same page of outsourcing versus having an individual here. I will let the borough manager speak briefly on kind of what we're looking at in options. And then I will kind of follow up with a weigh-in on it. And just for clarity, Mr. Solicitors, there is not anything that prohibits us from doing it in this fashion. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, you know, you don't have a vacancy until the date of the effective date of the resignation, which I believe is the end of January, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, after that date, you'll have 30 days to, you know, make an appointment to, or actually you'll be able to appoint effective at that time. However, if 30 days lapse, and this is one of the options that Mr. Graziani will be talking about, the council would have the ability to appoint the borough manager and then appoint a third party as a deputy collector. Now, the one thing you will have to do before you make any appointment after there's a vacancy is that you will need to change the compensation, or you should change the compensation for the tax collector, because you cannot do that during a tax collector's term. But you can do that during the period that there's a vacancy. So it's effective for the newly appointed tax collector. So the idea, what some of your neighboring municipalities have done is appoint the manager or even just a resident of the town who's willing to serve for a nominal fee, and then appoint like a Jordan Tax Service as a third party collector, and then enter into a contractual agreement with Jordan Tax to do the work. But I don't want to steal Mr. Graziani's thunder, so I'll stop there.
There's really not much to add other than I would refer council to the memo prepared by, our council. Meanwhile, Krista and I have been discussing with the school district options that are out there, and we are looking to get proposals from Jordan and Keystone. Jordan does send out our tax bills already. It's kind of interesting, their involvement. And so what would occur is, as was noted, that there would be the council could act to reduce the rate of pay, but in essence, Jordan would have an agreement with council to collect, and when they collect, there would be certain percentages. But just talking with the school district, COVID has changed everything really around the state, and a lot of mom and pop tax collectors who've worked out of their house for years are horrified at the idea of having people come to their house to drop off taxes. And this isn't just unique to us. The solicitor already mentioned one of our neighboring communities that has kept the tax collector, but the tax collector has given the work. They've outsourced the work to Jordan in that case. So I think council just, we would like you to do as much as you could to ask questions, and Chris and I and Gavin will work to answer those questions between this meeting and the first meetings in January to make whatever decision you've seen or deem is in the best interest of the, of the community.
Fair enough. Yeah, I will leave it to council if they have any particular questions. I know that I have spoken with the borough manager on this issue. And so if there are other questions that come up, obviously there's a bit of a window, you know, that you can speak with the borough manager. But I think generally speaking, this is a strong option.
I agree. One quick question. We're going to assume that whatever agency we do or whatever tax collector that we appoint to be a nominal head or whatever, we will do this with the school board. Is that your intent or our intent, Alex?
Correct.
Okay.
It can't speak for the district school board, but district staff who are involved in tax collecting are very much in favor of seeing this happen. And quite frankly, I'd love to have a discussion with our state senator and state representative. Like Act 32, consolidated collections for earned income county-wide throughout the Commonwealth, we really need to be doing the same thing on the real estate side. The idea that a school district the size of Woodland Hills would have 12 or 13 tax collectors, and that's an odd space. The home rule charter of Allegheny County seems to allow for the county treasurer to collect these taxes if the school board and if the borough thought was a good idea. So that could be another option. There may be that option as well, but I think it's important that we are, yes, working with them, and whatever we can do to advance the professionalization of the collection, the district would support.
And Chris, is there any update on their system, on the school board system for tax collection? Is it still down?
To our knowledge, we are just waiting to, they just have to reset the VPN connection to the computer that we have in the offices. And that's supposed to take place Tuesday or Wednesday. Ideally, that's Alex is coordinating that at the office so they can reconnect to the VPN. And then hopefully from that point forward, we can have Dan reconnect to the system then.
Thanks.
20 day now. Mm-hmm.
Just wondering, we have an applicant for the tax collector position. Are we doing anything with that, or do we have more than one?
I believe we only have one at this time.
Okay.
So I think that's part of what this discussion is.
Okay.
Anything else on that before I move forward?
Just one question, Alex. We're going to be considering a budget. To what extent would this have an impact on our budget figures?
Thank you for that question. Krista is ahead of us, and she's thought through basically the budget is as if Dan, our current tax collector, would remain. We're
Right.
assuming that's the highest ceiling from which you will have exposure to, and whatever decision you make, well, whatever. If you just simply appoint someone, they'll get Dan's salary.
Right.
If you choose a different option and adjust, as the solicitor said, the salary, you'll be whatever the third party collector would charge, which will be less than what you're currently paying the tax collector. Krista, do you have anything more to add to that?
No, you're absolutely right. I budgeted for the maximum amount possible based upon this year because it was actually higher than on average. And that takes into account everything from what we pay Jordan currently for sending out the bills, the tax collector's compensation, as well as the office supplies we're required to purchase. So right now we're budgeted for the maximum amount.
Okay. Do we have any figures on what any comparative? Well, you said you are getting 3 bids, so we'll wait on that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have those in the works now. We have some ideas, but we'll present them in a more formal manner for you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on that matter? Okay, so we're going to move over to police staffing. I believe is our next kind of issue on the table. A few different things I think within that space right now.
Yeah, Mr. President, I move to adopt resolution number 456 in this regard.
And that is pertaining to the cert.
Yeah, that is for regarding the civil service disqualification matter.
Thank you. And is there a second on that?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. Having none on this kind of quick motion of what is essentially a decertification or lack of a better way process. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that carries. It still brings us to the conversation of kind of where we are with our current staffing. So on the one space is obviously looking at probably getting us back to at least our status quo level. And the other space is keeping our officers healthy in this space of COVID. And as we know, we do have some, there has been some positive tests. So there are some things that we're going to try and make sure our officers are all healthy and able to do their job. And so I think, one of the conversations that we probably need to talk about is, what do we do in this circumstance? This is kind of an unprecedented space for us. So, I have not had the chance to talk with the chief on this particular issue, but I certainly think there are real concerns for us, as with every department, especially small departments, where when one of our officers tests positive or has to quarantine, regardless of whether they themselves test positive, that could potentially put us in a very difficult space in terms of our staffing. The good news in that space is that it is a temporary process, in terms of quarantining, so that hopefully, if it were something and we had multiple officers, that we would be able to deal with that in a short-term facet. But I have not. I think we're going to have to speak with the chief, and I think the police committee is going to have to talk to the chief and get a kind of contingency plan, for real small numbers. We're talking about needing to hire another officer just to get to our baseline. And so if we get 2 or 3 officers who need to quarantine at any time, we're down right now to 50% of our operating if we had three officers quarantining, really.
Right.
If we had 4 or 5, we're going to lose some coverage time for a little bit.
Well, I'm wondering, Jay, if this has to be an issue for other surrounding municipalities. So I'm wondering, and speaking to the chief, if we can look at talking with our neighbors and seeing, a contingency plan perhaps that we could work out for coverage if we need it.
Yeah, and Gavin, I assume that the cooperating agreement would allow for some of that.
Yeah, I don't know what sort of mutual aid agreements the borough has in place right now. I could tell you that I know that these sorts of agreements are being considered by some of our other municipal clients that don't already have them for this exact reason.
And we do have a number of mutual aid agreements.
Right.
So in that sense, they're existing, but we haven't really thought about it in the COVID space.
Right.
It's been more of, we operate with 1 or 2 man shifts. So, and so do most of our kind of small neighbors, right? So it's been much more about, hey, I need backup, just, where can I get backup? Well, I get it from my neighbors, than it has been to the point of, hey, I don't have an officer.
Right.
So,
sorry, Mr. Dorn, but if either the manager or the chief would be able to get me copies of the existing agreements we have in place, we could take a look and see if we have the flexibility as is, or if we need to go ahead and look to beef those up and adopt a new agreement.
So Alex, can you get those over to Gavin? Thank you. And then Gavin, whatever your opinion is, can you kick that back to the police committee?
Sure.
Perfect. And
But
then
for the most part, Mr. President, we work closely with Wilkins and Forest Hills.
Correct.
Am I, Paul, about that? Or, I mean, is it, I know that we take calls from them and they take calls from us, but I think they're the two most important boroughs or municipalities. Am I wrong on this?
You know what my take on that is when I read the police reports, it's true. Forest Hills assists, and it's a mutual thing between Forest Hills and Wilkins. I see that a lot. I'm looking further than that though for the general operations in the borough. Your things like welfare checks, burglar calls, just normal patrolling of the streets. If we had a crisis with the COVID, would one of the other boroughs provide us with that officer to take those places? I don't know.
Right. And that's effectively what I'm saying is we understand that we provide backup for each other right now, but we don't necessarily provide, primary service to each other. So Gavin will get those aid agreements. He'll take a look at those, and then what maybe we'll schedule a call to have committee chief and the mayor and Gavin and Alex on, and we can talk it out and see where we're at. I'd also like to know what where we currently are in terms of our staffing capacity, based on potential COVID issues. So I think that will be just as helpful, and that may take a day or two, but we'll get that done.
Hey, I might have to go out there and ride the new car.
I have a whole conversation about a new police car that's gonna make Kevin's head spin, but in the end he's gonna love it. You're gonna love it, Kevin, when I'm done. I promise. Yeah.
Everybody on the council is going to be deputized. That's what's going to happen.
And I'm saving it. I'm saving this one. He's gonna love it. It's gonna save us money in the long run, Kevin. I just need you to think a little bit longer run. It's gonna save us a lot of money.
I'm listening.
So that's what that tone is. Okay, I got it.
You have to watch it when Kevin leans back.
Right? Yeah. All right. Anything else on staffing right now?
No.
Okay. Let's jump into the general fund budget. So I am going to turn this over for a second out of my hands and allow kind of a lead on this for a second by our folks who know what they're doing, and Krista and Alex, and then I'll allow for comment from council, and we can all follow up with our own space. So where are we at? What needs to be covered? People have comments on it. People looked at it. Where we're going?
Well, first of all, that was a tremendous segue, talking about police staffing and then going into the general fund budget. Krista has provided for the borough council a latest draft, which is available for public review and so forth, for your consideration. It kind of speaks for itself. I can't say enough about how diligent and hardworking Krista has been in an extremely hard situation. You just can only imagine. It's been really hard for her, and for her to do that, I just can't be more grateful and thankful. But what you have is between now and Monday, a lot of information. We're able to, with our advertisements that we've done, should be able to vote on a budget on Monday, even if that includes a small tax increase. We've advertised the budget that contemplates a tax increase in boroughs. If you want to raise the taxes, you have to do it by ordinance. If you want to pass a budget that simply keeps taxes the same, you can do so by resolution. And of course, if you raise taxes and need an ordinance, you have to advertise it differently than you might a normal budget. So we have covered our bases. Obviously, advertising that you're considering an ordinance isn't passing an ordinance. It's just letting the public know it's before you for consideration. So whether Krista wants to do a quick follow-up, or if council has questions that we can begin to unpack. There's a number of moving parts, including the sewer budget, which is a later item on the agenda. But Krista, any thoughts before the council has their questions?
I mean, just as a general overview, some things that we have discussed is that the budget that you have before you does give you options at a variety of millage rates, so you can make the best decision for both the borough finances and the residents of the borough collectively. It lets you know how they'll impact each individual taxpayer based on the median home value according to the county's assessment values as of at the end of October. And it incorporates that hiring of another officer to maintain the staff levels that were adopted in 2020's budget, but the hiring never took place for, to be clear. And that's contained in the staffing matrix as a part of the appendices. It also includes a new police cruiser, as well as, but then it also includes a graduated paving program. So that helps you kind of give an idea of the major items that change from each millage rate. And those are the numbers that you really want to be paying attention to from each of the columns that are provided.
And so I want to make a couple comments really quickly. One, just to follow up on Alex's comment about Krista's work. I cannot thank both of them, but particularly Krista, who I can hear the tone in her voice when I'm saying, hey, can you do it this way? And she's doing her best to be like, oh, sure, we can definitely do that. So I totally understand, and I super appreciate the work that you put in. And part of that work is exactly what she just said, which is allowing council to see what our options are on the table. The reality is that even with all the conversation about potential development and all the rest of that, it's not here today, right? And our expenses are still here today, right? That is a reality. And so one of the things that you'll see as you're looking through the budget is the main thing that hits us, right, is the same main thing that hit us last time and the same main thing that'll hit us next year, right, which is really our infrastructure costs, right? And the primary driver outside of sewage, which we'll talk about in a second, is going to sit on our roads. And we, generally, I think our citizens want roads that are in good shape. And as we've said last year and the year before that and the year before that, it turns out you have to spend money for that. One of the real complications that we have faced, and I think, again, I cannot say how lucky we are with Alex and Krista here right now, because one of the real challenges that we had is that we all kind of opened our eyes to this idea that there was this big paving plan that was never really executed because people previously didn't quite have the interest in expending funds in the short term that would save us money in the long term. And so we ended up in a space that we are behind significantly on the paving that's necessary for our borough. And so you'll see in there options on kind of trying to keep us at that catch-up point. You may recall last year that we looked at that, and we paved at what we could do at a significantly increased clip. That doesn't catch us up.
No.
And so we sit in the same position again. The question of millage will really be one about infrastructure more than anything else. It's not a personnel question. It's not a extra activity type of question that some cities may face. We are a basic nuts and bolts. How much does it cost to keep our streets good? To keep our streets in a condition that you don't have a pothole that you're going to hit. That's where we're at. So as you look at the options that were presented, recognize that the lower that we go on our revenue, the less we're going to do in terms of that infrastructure, right? And the more that we go on our revenue, the more we're going to go on that infrastructure. And that is really the driver of that overall. And I, again, thank Krista, because I asked her kind of last minute to put that together with everything else going on. And I know it's been a difficult time for her. So I super appreciate that. That is where I'm coming from. I will turn it over for discussion for other people. And again, we have some time to look at it, but by some time, I mean 4 or 5 days. So comments back out for discussion.
Mr. President, again, I want to say the same thing about Krista and Alex. They've done an extraordinary job, and they've really instituted some really, really good things in the 8 months that they've been here. And I want them to continue to do that, and I think they have a plan to do that. Our finance committee, Adam and I and Valerie met with Krista and Alex a couple of weeks ago. At that time, I think I told you and Diane that we thought we could hold the 7.48 millage.
Right.
It would mean a cutback to the roads. I think with the good help from Gateway, Dennis and Ralph, we've come a long way with the roads. We have more work to do. I don't know if we still need the $400,000 that we're thinking of doing. We need a plan, and we don't have one. And that's, I think, part of Krista's and Alex's idea, along with Ralph and Dennis, to come up with a plan during this next year. They're also doing a good job, Krista and Alex, putting the cost centers where they belong. In other words, what's sewers, what's stormwater, what's capital, what's not capital. And we need to give them a chance to do that over the next year. Our roads need work, but I think we can do it at a reduced level than we have the last several years. We instituted a 1 mil increase last year. Now, again, it wasn't an overt promise, but it was implied that we would hold off this year. And personally, I like to hold to that. We're also going to start working on the pump station, of which we have $1.2 million worth of grants to work on. That's going to take up a lot of energy and a lot of activity over the next year. And I think we can maybe afford to back off the paving plan in order for our engineering and Ralph to get their hands around the pump station project and finish that. So my recommendation is to hold to the millage. The revenue side, Christy, you're right, it's going to be decreased, but I'm hoping not as much as you think. There's also the possibility, and I know Alex, you and I have talked about this, about a CARES Act, both from possibly the feds and the states, that would increase our revenue. And the final point is, I don't think our residents need a tax increase right now with all this going on and all the uncertainty with the pandemic. Plus the fact that we're going to get to the sewer budget, we are going to face an increase from Alcosan, we are going to face an increase from the WPGAA, and we are going to increase our surcharge because of some of those infrastructure issues, Jay. So that's my part of the conversation. I think we ought to try to maintain the 7.48 and give our very capable staff a chance to put some good long-term plans in effect. Thank you.
Duly noted. Anybody else on council?
Yeah, I'll just give this some context. And it's not that I'm advocating for one thing or another, but I think it's important to express some of the things that are on my mind. We don't know when the project, the Hillwood project, will be starting. We don't know what impact that's going to have on our services, on our infrastructure, on our everything. It's a huge demolition construction process. I'm uncomfortable that we can't know what impacts that's going to have on us. I'm concerned about our other infrastructure. We lucked out this year because we didn't have those gargantuan rains. We already know that there are a number of projects in the borough that have been waiting, that Ralph's been waiting for funding for quite a while. I mean, I'm just nervous about thinking, based on some assumptions that I don't have a lot of facts for. I'm nervous about about working below what it's actually going to cost us, and that's where I am. I'm not comfortable with not having more of a cushion.
Duly noted. Anybody else on discussion? So let me say this. I think that what we're hearing is the exact, points we need to contemplate, both in the unknown space, in trying to address the potential unknowns, and the known space. Realistically, there's certainly a part of me that fully agrees with where Kevin is in the space of both, while the borough has this part of uncertainty and difficulty and decreased revenue dealing with COVID, quite frankly, our residents have this uncertainty and potential decrease, income in dealing with COVID. And so it puts us in a really difficult space. Why should this be anything different? And I think that's why it was important that we kind of had options in that space in terms of, potentials with both the millage and what the infrastructure and other costs would be. I don't, I'm not going to, straw pull or pull, try and get card on where we are. I would simply say to folks right now, take a look at it, consider kind of the push and pull that we have in this space, and see which of these options or any of these options that work best for your comfort zone for our citizens. And then we'll come back to the table and put that on the table as the options and see where we land. The one thing I will say in the push and pull of all of this is that I have learned to be very, very comfortable with our council. That if we set it at no change, we do it because it is the best thing for our citizens. If we set it at a $0.5 mil or $1 mil, we do that because it's the best thing for our citizens. I am comfortable with that we have a council that takes into consideration both our individual citizens and the need of our borough as well. So I'll leave it there. If there isn't any other discussion item that I will move, or discussion on this item, then I'll move forward on the agenda. So is there anything else that wanted to be covered in this before we move forward?
Jay, if you could send me an email in the discussion about the police car, I'd appreciate it.
I will.
Save us money.
I will. I've thought this out very, very well. It's not going to be what you think, but I'll save it for the big charming point. I got to charm you first, Kevin. It takes a little bit. I got to warm you up, get you dinner, make you happy. So, but absolutely.
Jay, I had one question.
Yeah.
I had one question. When do we know when the school district will issue its tax increase, or will it? Do we know that? I mean, do we have any knowledge of when that happens?
I don't know the schools when they set their
They're on a fiscal, I mean, they're at a different year. So they've already passed that budget and their tax increase for this year.
It's usually around June or July, isn't it, Diane?
2021, yeah. They passed their budget for 2021.
Summertime.
So that'll be coming up again in the spring, and they'll vote on it in June, generally.
Outstanding. Any other questions on this subject matter?
Yeah, I failed to also express how incredibly impressed I am with this budget and the budget process and the narrative and everything. Thank you both for the work you've done. It's really impressive, and I'm grateful.
Outstanding. All right, moving forward on the agenda. Now that my agenda just disappeared, there we go. Let's see if we can get ourselves back. All right, moving straight into sanitary sewer budget. This party never ends. So I will leave that space to lead discussion out of my hands and into the capable hands of our folks again.
So as a part of the budget narrative, one of the things that's been included is the discussion of the sanitary sewer budget. The borough has a responsibility in taking care of the lines where the sewer is conveyed from people's laterals in their homes through the borough lines and then conveyed to Elkasan for treatment. So we're just a pass through in that system. The borough gets revenue from that, from a surcharge that is paid by the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority. And of course, we've already noted Alcosan in 2017 passed a 5-year plan whereby they will be increasing their fees to treat sanitary sewer. And back to the beginning of the meeting with Ken and stormwater, one of the big issues of the ancient infrastructure that we have in Allegheny County is the infiltration of stormwater on heavy rain days that Diane had mentioned that end up overwhelming our system. So with that have come a lot of mandates. Nobody wants to live in a county where we have to have health advisories to get near the Great Allegheny, the Monongahela, and the Ohio rivers. But yet that's what we do, because on heavy rain events, raw sewage is dumped into the waterways of Allegheny County. So this is all related in our little piece of the puzzle, which is a small portion of conveying that sewage. And currently we have a surcharge of $6, and we're looking at a need to raise that. Now, we apologize because we're just learning on the fly, thanks to Gavin and his good work, that we really need to do it by ordinance. And if we're going to do that by ordinance, we either will have to have a special meeting before the end of the year or simply do it in January. Now that will have ramifications on Krista's good budget work, but it matters because sewage is billed quarterly and kind of how we've done things in the past. So we're not gonna be able to figure this all out tonight, but it looks like it may be something we do in January that is past the ordinance. If we did try to have a special meeting, the meeting would just be a 15, 20-minute meeting. It could be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, sometime after the budget or the ordinance would be properly advertised. But it looks like we'd need to do this by ordinance, right, Gavin? If the council wants to change the sewer rate. And we're looking at going from $6, and Krista will correct me in a minute here, to $10 for the quarterly charge per 1,000 gallons. So if you don't use a lot of water and you're very good at conserving, you will control the amount of extra money you pay next year. However, if you're like me and have 5 kids and use an amazing amount of water, despite high energy efficiency water appliances, you'll pay a lot more. It's a kind of pay-as-you-go system. So Krista, you want to add? And Dennis, feel free. You could probably help us with some of the mandates that are facing us. But Krista, you want to go ahead?
Yes. So on average, according to Alcosan and WPJWA, the average homeowner uses approximately 11 to 12,000 gallons per quarter. What that translates to is most citizens, unlike those like Alex, would be impacted approximately $16, $18 a month. And it's going to come out to be closer to $50 per quarter. Now that increase includes those increases for Alcosan and WPJWA as well. And those are outlined in the sewer budget that is online. So everyone can understand how this would personally impact them. And if you know your water usage better, you can make that calculation on your own as well.
Hey, Krista, hold on a second. I want to make sure you're saying that the $50 per quarter includes the 7% increase and the 5% increase, as well as the $10.
Well, I've done the calculation based on what the average is. Now, what going from one to the other was a little harder for me to calculate, but and put that all into a easy to read
Right.
matrix. But that just shows you how the surcharge will increase, but it also shows you, okay, so let me rephrase that. It shows you how the surcharge increase will impact you, but it's using the numbers that include the Alcosan and WPJWA increases. So you'll see what your bill would look like after everything's said and done. And you can, if you use that amount of water, you can easily compare that then. So you can see what the change would mean to you.
Well, like I said in my comments about the general fund, you guys are doing good work in putting the right costs in the right centers. Which, quite frankly, I'm still confused as to what goes into the sewer budget and what goes into the general fund. And I think you're doing a good job to separate that. So in the future, we'll have a clearer idea as to where that money goes to. If you know what I mean. I still have some concern as to where the engineering costs are broken out between the sewer budget and the general fund. And I thank you for working on that, because I think it'll be clearer in the future. So.
Yeah, and just so everyone's on the same page with that, we did, in order to reduce the amount of what the surcharge increase would have to be. We did remove storm sewers from the sanitary sewer budget to the general fund. That way we can incorporate the storm sewer maintenance as well as capital projects upon the storm sewers as part of our general and capital funds, and remove it from the sanitary sewers, because truly your sanitary sewer surcharge fee and those fees you pay through Elcasan or through WPJWA for Elcasan should all just flow through a sanitary sewer fund, and there shouldn't be any commingling of those. So we've cleared that up in order to reduce the amount the increase would have to be, and moving forward for just financial, clarity overall.
Okay. Thank you.
Dennis, if I could ask you just to, again, what generally are we doing with our piece of the puzzle when it comes to these different charges and different entities? What is the borough needing to do on an annual basis, and what do we have to do in general with the 6 going up to $10 per 1,000 gallons that borough residents pay?
Yeah, the borough was under a consent order back in 2004. Everything kind of started with that process. That developed an operation and maintenance plan for your sewers, so that sewers are televised yearly, repairs are made as needed. There's a whole series of projects, and we typically have our recurring contracts for those projects each year. We've been trying to work at those. We still have outstanding repairs in the system, with the system being very old, at least 50 years old in most cases, and an interesting system at that. A lot of 6-inch and 4-inch lines and dead end lines that need additional repairs. So that is the primary amount of the work, is going towards construction, televising. We try to do a lot of manhole to manhole liners, so we have less excavation repairs throughout the borough as well. But with that, there is a new consent order on the horizon. It was expected in 2020, but was delayed with everything. So that is expected early in 2021. The borough has been, being at the top of the hill, is in good shape in terms of the amount of stormwater which is making its way into the sanitary lines, but still will be required to do something on that side as well.
Thank you. Council, is there any other discussion on this before we move, staying in the sewer kind of genre? If there isn't any other discussion there, we can move to the tap fee increase.
So, as you know, for the first time in really recent memory, we have a significant land development before us, and maybe indeed too with redevelopment of the Schaefer School imminent, that proposal come before us. And what any local government should be doing is annually looking at their fees, and of course one of those fees are a tap-in fee to the sanitary sewer system. And lo and behold, since it's been so long since we've had new tap-ins, the fee really isn't current. And we're proposing that the council consider making it current, so it can take advantage of the great demand that will come from these two entities with their developments. Obviously, the Hillwood proposal is enormous and needs to be accounted for, but that can't be done without a little science. So Gateway Engineer has helped us to be able to satisfy the state regulatory requirements for setting a tap-in fee. It isn't, the boroughs have no ability to just arbitrarily set amount that would be, not conducive for development, for example, or would be profit making. You just can't imagine a new number and say that's the rate. You have to base the rate, the costs associated with permitting that tap into the public sanitary sewer system. So Gateway's done the heavy lifting, and we've got the numbers. We'll be getting those again to you in detail, and we'll need Borough Council to act to raise those rates, so that when we get land development proposals from whoever, and they want to do taps, they'll have to pay the rate that is approved by council.
Understood, and fairly no-brainer on our end, not on your end. And I like adding a little science to the mix. That's it. So outstanding. I don't know if any council members had any comment or discussion, because I think it's fairly straightforward on our end right now. All righty. By the way, through this whole thing of talking about water fees, my daughter has had her bath running nonstop through the entire thing, just as to give me the proper ambiance as we're having this conversation, apparently. And just as we're ending, she ended it. All right, so this moves us to planning and reappointing members. So where are we at?
Yeah, Mr. President, I think where we are at this point is that we have one vacancy, and it's quite possible that we will have more than one in the short term. So I would hate to see us go through that process and then go through it again. So I think my suggestion is that for the time being, we do our investigating about exactly how many openings we may have. And meanwhile, if any council members have any ideas for appointment, obviously, we now are going to have a planning commission that's going to be active. And with these two developments, the one very, very large, we need to be very, very thoughtful about who is sitting on the planning commission and what they will need in terms of training in order to perform their responsibilities. So I would just go there. We need more investigation. We need nominations.
And, you know, I would add, I should be able to at least address one of those vacancies by week's end. I haven't been able, because of my own quarantine, to leave my own house to answer that question. But by week's end, I should be able to answer that piece, please.
Okay, and then we'll have to do
Diane,
yeah.
What's the optimum number of members that you think we should have? Five.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's been a pool of people that have been very much involved, you know, in coming into our meetings on the Hillwood development.
Yeah.
Could be a pool of candidates. We ought to.
Yeah, I mean, they have to express an interest. I mean, Alex has a notice on the website. They have to express an interest.
Well, the other side of it too, as we noted earlier, you had 10 applicants for the council opening.
Yeah.
Now it became council openings. You've selected 2 from the 10, and
Right.
almost all of them said to some level they would be willing to serve.
Right.
However, it doesn't hurt to get the word out. But the issue is, and this is what Gavin and I are kind of thinking about, is they're likely going to meet the first Wednesday of January.
Yeah.
They'll likely have business before them at that meeting.
Right.
So if you can make appointments at the December 14th or the first meeting that you meet in January,
yeah,
you'll be able to get those potentially 2 of the 5 seats filled.
Right.
We do definitely have one resignation, which created the one opening, as Ms. Law had pointed out.
Right.
And we think we may have a second one just because of a person's personal situation. But
Right.
we are looking at, Gavin, as we have already noted, having to have them meet sooner than later.
That's right. I mean, we can always, Alex is going to be receiving the conditional use application and land development applications for Hillwood tomorrow. Right. So that, even though there's a standing meeting, I think it's the first Wednesday of the way that we historically have advertised. Now, that's not to say that can't be pushed back a bit if necessary, if you want to make your appointment in January. And I'm not sure how the calendar falls. I don't have it in front of me, but you could set up a special meeting of that planning commission if you need some additional time. But to Alex's point, it's sooner rather than later. We're going to need a fully functional, fully staffed planning commission.
Excellent.
Gavin, we would be able to have, in a pinch, would we be able to have a special meeting in order to make that appointment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. All righty. Anything else on this today? All right. Then we are on to the cable agreement. So you saw in your packet, we had
next week, I'd like council to consider a resolution. The Cohen Law Group, on behalf of the Turtle Creek Valley Council of Governments, has renegotiated the Verizon side of it. And that was shared with us a little earlier. I apologize for not talking about it much, simply because of Hillwood. We've been kind of crowded out some of the information, but I did provide it to council, and and our solicitor. We don't need to hold any other special meetings in order to adopt it by resolution. And so we'll have that on the agenda next Monday.
What's the duration of that agreement again?
I'm not sure.
I couldn't identify it.
Yeah, I'll have to look up it real quickly here. I'll maybe get that answer in a minute or two.
Okay.
For some reason, I think 10 years is my.
So a couple of things on to that point. One, just some basic things, nothing super complicated, although I have some super complicated questions that I'll spare everybody for today. But in the kind of free service space that we get from the deal, right, which includes the school district, right, that kind of thing. One, it lists out, because it is based on the old agreement, it lists out Schaefer School, right, in the agreement. Now, of course, Schaefer School isn't there, but I could also see the potential of us having something of a senior kind of area, right, because of where that is. That's not listed in the free service, right, that's provided. So I'd like to make sure that we have proper kind of service that's available. The other thing I was trying to figure out with it is what they're providing in terms of the type of Verizon service that they're talking about distributing throughout our area, because I was trying to figure out the 5G space in that, and it's a complicated read. So I'll ask, I'll probably follow up rather than kind of drive through this all. But I just want to make sure I understand completely what the service that they're offering out to the residences that we're signing off on. So no big, just putting it out there. So if anybody wants free time to read that agreement, it's
I'll follow up with Cohen Law Group in the morning with some specifics. Maybe
well,
Jay,
we can touch base.
Yeah, and then Krista saw the 5-year was the term.
Excellent. Okay.
To be clear, just like sewer surcharges, residents pay a surcharge on their cable for the right for the cable companies to go through our right of way. Our concern is 10 years, 5 years from now, will it be something we get revenue wise? Will people cancel cable and move to other means of providing their viewership? So it's something that's interesting to us of how that's such an evolving,
And that's what I'm asking. There's some point of how they provide service in there, and that may be one of the questions on the table for us. So I'll follow up with you, and we'll make sure we have clarity on it.
A question, is that cable and internet or just cable?
No, it's cable. So it's really interesting the way they do that. It was the cable franchise, which they were actually renting in our right of ways. When you see wires overhead, unlike the electricity and the telephone who don't pay rent, the cable companies got stuck paying rent. But they've been really careful to limit their exposure to these charges to just the cable side of things. So when people go off cable and maybe just use internet, they stop paying, even though it's with Verizon or with Comcast, they stop paying the cable franchise side of it. That means the borough doesn't get that rental.
Except in the language about fiber. Right, so there's a little bit different in the kind of pure internet space and the fiber space, because cable and internet both come off the fiber line, right? So Verizon's in this interesting space that they provide fiber for their cable, right? Versus when you have kind of your cable line and then your DSL line, right, or your internet lines. So they run on the same line, which is part of the conversation that I was just talking about. So they have a subsection in there about fiber and what the limitations are. So, well, I'm not going to jump all in it, but we can talk about it tomorrow.
We live in a changing world.
We do, and pretty soon fiber will be secondary too, because 5G will kick in. And then that's when, to Alex's point, people just completely, the fiber isn't their method for gaining internet even, right? And now it's purely wireless, and we will all sort it out. Anything else on the magic of Verizon?
No.
All right, moving on to any kind of committee reports, staff reports. Anybody want to bring anything to the table that you read or in the giant reports that you thought was interesting? Beginning with any highlights from staff that they want to bring up.
just want to reiterate all of the information in the binder. I will be forwarding to you soon the study from Gateway related to the tap fee. So you can kind of follow how we're arriving at the number we're going to be proposing for you all. A lot of moving parts. You guys have been through an amazing 6 months, an amazing year. And between resignations and COVID and Hillwood, I'm very appreciative. Just stick with us. Light is at the end of the tunnel. We'll get through this next week, but we're available. Krista and I, we will make ourselves available at night or whatever time necessary to slow it down to go through these particular big decisions that you have before you next Monday.
I would just like to say, you know, I'm going to say this at every meeting. Our citizens who are joining us at these meetings, please, please tell your friends, tell your neighbors. There is so much information on our website. Alex works hard to get everything there, everything about the budget, all the different kinds of things we're doing. We really want our citizens to visit our website so that they can become informed about what we're doing. And I would add to that, go to the Alcoasand website, and if you're really bored, you can read the entire consent decree that we are operating under, which Dennis mentioned. So that's always fun too.
You. Any other reports, updates, information any other council members have for the moment? Mr. Solicitor, anything you'd like to bring to the table outside of your winning ways?
Nothing, Mr. President.
Do you guys have like a slogan or something that you say when you win? Anything?
Go team.
Yeah, probably not that kind of traditions, I understand. All right. The only, Kevin, anything your way? I see a lean in.
That's okay. I just want to, never mind. I keep going back and forth because I know the shine on my head probably bothers a lot of people. So that's what I'm trying to do. No, I have nothing else. But I appreciate that Valerie and Adam, we got together in the finance committee and also Diane on the sewer committee. I think that's important to do so. I know it's a little complicated now with the Zoom, but I think we need to continue that.
Oh, we do, yeah.
So, I would just point out, I'll be reaching out to everybody later this week on the committees themselves. We have 2 new members now, so I was kind of waiting out a little bit, knowing the potential. We'll get things reorganized. Technically, we don't have a reorg meeting. There's an election right now, but nonetheless, we'll get committees reorged so that we're able to move forward. Also, just a point as we brought up some of the development going on, you know, that it does look promising and moving forward on schedule. You know, I talk to you guys kind of regularly about my you know, I want to see our sites all develop. The Schaefer progress continues. Looks like it's moving, you know, forward as planned. And so I think next up for them is to put in some applications with the county for some funding, and then we continue on our way to get that those senior cottage homes on that site. So if all goes well, we'll you know, we'll sort our way through all these, and you know.
Do we know anything else about the Allegheny Land Trust? Is that still moving forward?
You know, it's my understanding it is still moving forward. I actually have a they reached out to me to ask to speak with them. I think primarily because they, you know, they were hoping out of the Hillwood space that they would just get all the money, you know, that someone would just cut them a check for, you know, the entire amount, you know, and so that's not how this is going to work, you know, but you know, I'm comfortable and confident that you know, the players involved want to see that happen.
Good.
And so that it will continue to move forward. Listen, I've got, you know, I got my daughter, you know, I made her that pledge that one council meeting about the playground, right? That is riding on this thing, right? So you know, I will not let the children of Churchill down. In fact, I thought about this the other day, you know, as this, you know, assuming everything moves forward and we have this space for the playground and funding and whatnot, I do believe that we should have an ad hoc committee made up of children that should name the playground.
That's a good idea.
As a
Yeah.
side note, teach kids government and
Make your daughter
allow
the
them to participate.
Because how
So-
long was it that your daughter came to the council and stood up by herself and said, I expect you to make a playground for people?
It's been a couple of years. She
I
was
like, what,
6.
4 or 5?
No,
Yeah.
she was 5, because 6 she went to Pittsburgh to talk about gun control. So
Oh,
she was
right,
Pittsburgh.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, she tried it out here first at Borough Council, speaking in front of council first. Yeah, she just turned 5 on her playground demand.
Okay,
Now, if I don't come through, she'll start organizing and protesting.
exactly.
So
I'll help her. Mhm.
but sadly, I don't even think she needs the help. That's the worst part about it.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true too.
So, okay. Anything else on the table in this space? All right. If there is not anything additional, I believe the only thing left on the agenda then is to end the party. Am I missing anything, Alex? All right.
Oh, one thing, I'm sorry. I just
No,
want
please.
to congratulate Matt again. You know, we kind of went over that go fast. Thank you so much, Matt. And we'll be in touch. Alex will be in touch and we'll hit the ground running, right?
I used to make it more exciting for people. I've got past glossing it over. You know what you got into, Matt, right? You know what you signed up for, my friend. You know. So, welcome to the madness, my friend. Absolutely. Anything else on the table from folks? As I like to say, I'm the only thing between you and doing something that you really like. So, all right. Motion to adjourn, anyone?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right,
Second.
game, set, match.
Be careful out there.
Yes.
Good night, all.
Congratulations again, Matt. And,
Good night, everyone.
Good
hey,
night,
Alex,
everybody.
I'll talk to you later. Gavin, I would almost want to say whatever the slogan is of your disgusting football club, but I won't do it. I won't do it. What
Where's
did
it
that
going?
say anyway?
He's falling over backwards.
Oh, I read it. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Nice.
I'm getting my connection's breaking up. I don't know what's going on here, but I guess I should probably hang it up.
Yeah, you should hang it up. That's the right word for you. All
Good night, all.
right, thank you all. Have a great night.
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 Yeah, thanks.
Night.